practice this. Some of them are clouded with mystery, and why do you do these strange things? There's a whole science into the reasons for the commandments, and there are books have been written about it. But it's very dangerous to assign to commandments, specific commandments, reasons that are not given by the Torah, and very few of them are given in the Torah. But we try to do it to really understand. It's dangerous because if you say that the reason we should be kosher is for health reasons, that people got trichinosis from eating uncooked pork, or people got sick with certain bacteria because they mixed meat and milk, and they didn't have proper refrigeration in those days, and they used wooden bowls, then it's very dangerous to say that this is the reason for being kosher, because then what happens when we live in the modern world and we know how to prepare pork without getting sick? If we know how to prepare meat and milk dishes without getting sick, then maybe being kosher is not important anymore, and a lot of people reach those conclusions. The fact of the matter is, while the Torah doesn't allow you to eat anything that's not healthy, and the chief rabbi of Haifa, for instance, and some of the chief rabbis in Israel have have proclaimed that smoking cigarettes is not kosher because it's dangerous to your health. Not all the rabbis agree with that, but the principle is there that what is injurious to your health is something you shouldn't be doing. But that doesn't mean that that's the reason for being kosher. Matter of fact, some foods that are not kosher are very healthy. Some fish, shellfish, etc., that have iodine in it, other minerals, could be very healthy for you. That's not the reason. The reason is because God wants us to be a holy people. That's the reason He gives. So it's very dangerous to assign certain commandments. We'll get to the more detailed reasons for kashrus when we discuss that. I think the abiding reason for the commandments is to give us opportunities of growth, for our souls to grow. It gives us ways of expressing ourselves as we live our daily lives, expressing those ideals that we find important and endearing in a concrete way. We just live them. Now, being kosher teaches us a real ethical sensitivity. You know, you shouldn't kill to eat, and if you do it, you must do it in a humane way. You don't mix meat, which is the death of the animal, with milk, which gives and sustains life. It's an unnatural mixture. You create an awareness of what you are. You pick up something to eat, you have to ask, is it kosher? If you don't know, you look at the labels, you look at the ingredients. It trains you to be aware. No matter what observance customs that you follow, you have to have this great awareness, and if you can infuse within it certain values, you're living those values. You know that it's a great mitzvah to give to charity, and not just your money and your pocketbook, but of your time. You come, you help out in the night shelter we have in the synagogue here, or for Jewish family service, or visiting the sick, or whatever. You know that when your life becomes involved in the lives of others in a meaningful way, when you become connected to other people, and you have a family, a community that does that together, it makes a big difference. And the abiding principle in all this is chesed, that we talked about last week. Chesed means kindness, but it means more than that. It means a certain kind of love, compassion, and passion. You have to be passionate about this as well. Turn to page 46, and those of you who don't have this book, you can get it. It's in the bookshop. We have it here, and you can get it in Judaica Corner or anywhere else. It's called To Be a Jew by Chaim Donin. First paragraph on page 46. Let me read it. While the whole range of Jewish law may be classified on the basis of commandments which have to do with man's relationship to his Maker, or mitzvot shebein adam lemakom, and those which have to do with man's relationship to his fellow man, or mitzvot shebein adam lechaveiro, there is an overlapping. We took a look yesterday in the synagogue. We read the Ten Commandments. And sages teach there are 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments. You know, not like Mel Brooks says. Remember the Mel Brooks story? He comes down from Mount Sinai as Moses and holding 3 tablets, and he says, "The children of Israel, I have 15 commandments," and one falls down. "I have 10 commandments for you." There were only 10, 2 tablets, and one had supposedly laws between man and God, and the other had laws between man and man. Very plainly delineated. However, if you take a look at the laws between man and God, what's the 5th commandment? Honor thy father and thy mother. That's the law between man and God. It's very strange. There's an overlap. Oh, certainly an overlapping. Because the parent is a representative of God on this earth. God couldn't be everywhere, so he made mothers. Have you heard that expression? It's very important.
Can you tell us about the way that the tablets were originally created and what the significance of the way their structure was?
The structure?
Yeah.
I mean, originally, the original tablets were fashioned by God,
Right.
and it had the way the Torah describes the letters is very difficult to understand. Apparently, they were completely through the tablet. You know, the letters were printed completely from one side through the other, and yet when you turned it around, you could still read it. Didn't have a mirror image. It was very strange. You know, it's shrouded in mystery to figure that out, and the letters apparently had so much power that it enabled Moses to hold them, because they must have been incredibly heavy, especially walking down a big mountain. I don't know. Have anybody here been to Mount Sinai? Yeah, I have. So the 2 of us have been there. You know, you ride up on camels for.
I didn't ride any camel up.
Well, I rode up in a camel for hours till I got to a certain point. The camels couldn't go any farther, and then we had to climb.
I almost fell off at that point because it was dark when I hiked up.
Yeah, we have to go when it's dark because it's hot, it's impressively hot if you go all the time. Really? What's amazing is that the monks in the Santa Caterina Monastery built stairs from the bottom all the way to the top. That's truly amazing. Stone stairs.
Did they build a monastery where Moses was supposed to have been?
No, it's on the bottom. They built the monastery on the bottom. There is some sort of chapel of sorts on top.
Isn't it where it's very near where the burning bush was?
Well, what they have
What they say. Where Saint was.
Well, they'll show you a burning bush. They'll say that although the burning bush was supposed to have been somewhere else, what they'll say this bush comes from a twig that was taken from the burning bush. It was blood. I mean, you have to understand that the Bedouins, they're masters in tourism. And they love to create these kinds of legends. So that itself is subject to debate. But anyway, I don't know, what more do you want to know about the tablets?
Well, I don't know. I guess the sort of thing that I liked hearing about was about how God gave us the commandments, and one thing I heard about was that the first 2 commandments that all the people of Israel could hear, and there's never been any question about the first 2 commandments. But at the end of the 2nd commandment, because everybody kept expiring and coming back, that they said to Moses, you tell us what they are, because we can't bear to hear the word of God ourselves.
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you the real story there. Mm-hmm. You heard the chapter. Now you're going to hear the rest of the story.
He was there.
Paul Harvey. I was there. You were there too. We were all at Sinai. All the Jewish souls that ever lived were at Mount Sinai. So you meet somebody, another fellow Jew looks familiar. You never met him physically in your life. You met each other at Sinai. So and those of you who are not Jewish and you become Jewish, means that your soul was once at Mount Sinai, and that's why you became Jewish now. Which is a very comforting thought, by the way. Understand that when a person dies, the partners, the soul and the body that shared a lifetime together, it's hard for them to part. And each must return to its source. The body must be buried into the ground from which it came, and the soul ascends towards God, towards heaven, whatever that means, because it's not really a physical ascension. And The soul, we believe, hovers over the body until burial. That's why I have to treat a dead body with great respect and honor, etc. You watch what you say around the deceased, and you don't study Torah around the deceased because they can't do it anymore. It's like taunting them. It's like the Talmud compares this like eating great delicacies in front of a hungry man. Unless you give him something, right? You just don't do that. It's not fair. It's not right. So these partners that separate at death are very fond of each other. It's hard for them to separate sometimes. But each one wants to return to its source. If not for the soul, the body could not stay erect and sustain itself. It's the life force. And each one wants to return to its source. When the soul leaves, the body will just fall because it can't hold itself up anymore. And the soul will want to return to its source. Now imagine, when God created the world, He created all the souls that ever lived. Just like a woman, when she's born, has all the eggs that she will ever have in her life, and each month she just drops another one. And God drops a soul into our bodies for the purpose of growth, soul growth. That's very important. But if you read Moody and all these accounts of people who've had these near-death experiences, who have clinically died and gone through the dark tunnel and towards the light, they never wanted to come back. So what they were told, you have to go back, it's not your time. It was so wonderful being there with the voice of God, the presence of God, the light of God, whatever those terms mean. I'm using human terms to describe things that really are indescribable in human terms. All these people, these tens of thousands of cases that we have now, and they were told it's your turn to go, didn't want to go back. They heard the voice that was very familiar. This experience was very familiar because that's where they came from. They wanted to stay. It's very comforting to them. They're told, no, you have to go back. Imagine in Mount Sinai. The Jewish people are at Mount Sinai. And it's very dramatic. And they had just experienced the exodus from Egypt after the 10 plagues, the crossing of the Red Sea, and they were preparing for 3 days or so. And they washed themselves and cleansed themselves and put on new clothes and all kinds of preparations that they went through these 3 days, purifying themselves to receive the 10 Commandments. And here they are at Sinai, gathered around the mountain, and the mountain's lit up with fire, probably of some volcanic activity. It was thunder and lightning and earthquakes, and the whole world was trembling. And then they hear the voice of God speaking to them, each one individually, like I'm speaking to, like I would speak to you individually. They hear God speaking to them individually, the 10 Commandments. So after the second commandment, the people got frightened, terribly frightened, because their souls, literally, after hearing and experiencing God again, wanted to go back, and they thought their souls were going to jump right out of their bodies. And then when they did that, they were going to die. So they said to Moses, tell God to stop. You go up, you get the rest of them, tell us. You tell us what the 10 Commandments are. And then we will know then. That's what the Torah records that. But there's a verse that at the end of the Torah, towards the end of the Torah, which is a song that all the kids are taught in the Hebrew school. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe, the Torah which is commanded to us by Moses. Right? The Torah is commanded to us by Moses. And if you take a look at the Hebrew word Torah, those who don't know Hebrew have to bear along. You can write this down if you have it. Oh, I'll print it. How's that? I'll make it easy. Oh, Torah. Now, every letter has a numerical value. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. Aleph is 1, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Yud is 10. The next letter, Kaf, is 20, 30, 40, 50, until you get to Kof, which is 100, and then 200, 300, and 400. Taf is 400. Okay, come in. Vav is a 6th letter. Reish is 200. And Hey is 5. Fifth letter. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. 5. Right? Adds up to 611. Torah adds up to 611. Wait a second. How many commandments are there? 613. So what's going on here? Oh, Torah, Tzivalana Moshe, Moses taught us 611. God gave us 2. Okay? Does that answer your question? Okay, let's finish this paragraph.
This is his favorite thing to do.
Yeah. The Torah is so connected with these deep mysteries. It's there's no end to it. For even the ritual law appears to have ethical implications in that the purpose for many of them is the perfection of the ethical, moral qualities of the individual who is observing the rituals. Many biblical commentators saw an ethical basis in such prohibitions as the eating of blood, or the mixture of meat and milk. Blood, the Torah says, is the soul of the animal. We don't do that. And where the ritual observance itself did not contribute to such ends, the sages often endowed the ritual with meaningful interpretations that emphasize moral norms and ethical values. Like the removal of the leaven on chametz for Passover was utilized as an opportunity to identify the leaven bred with horniness and arrogance, and urge their removal from ourselves as well. So when we remove the chametz, the leavening before Passover, we're supposed to try to remove the arrogance that we have within us, as well as an opportunity for the kind of correction of our personalities. It is a psychological truth that behavioral ideals assert themselves more firmly when tied to concrete everyday actions than when derived solely from symbolic or philosophic attractions, however lofty they be. The ethical imperatives and values of Judaism may have received their very strength and historical permanence for the ritual foundations. We ought never to lose sight of the fundamental role of the ritual in the development of the ethics, in the building of character, and in the perfecting of human relationship. Okay. 47, he goes into acts of kindness. Right. So for a Jew, the ritual is important, but part of what he has to do is to be kind, and it gives you specifics. By the way, the golden rule. What's the golden rule?
Do
Do unto us as
they do unto you.
as
You would want them to do.
as you would want them to do unto you, right? Where does that come from? It's based upon a verse in the Torah, which is towards the bottom of 47. So the Torah teaches, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And at the end of that paragraph, you see, in the commenting upon the practical implementation of the biblical verse, Hillel said, what is hateful to you, do not do unto others. Which is different than saying, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Because do unto others implies that you're interfering with it in other people's lives. But do not do unto others as you would not want them to do to you. Implies that you understand everybody has a right to live the way they freely choose to. Only and be careful how you behave when you interact with them. Hospitality. It's a mitzvah to be hospitable, to extend yourself to welcome others. One of the greatest mitzvahs that you can find is if you're in a room or a social setting and you see someone is uncomfortable and sitting in a corner or by themselves, to walk over and make them feel welcome. That's a great mitzvah. I would say it ranks up there with eating kosher and observing the Sabbath and everything else.
I think everybody does that.
We try. But to understand that's a mitzvah. It's not just a nice southern thing to do. This is the way a human being behaves. It's a religious duty to visit a sick person who's taken ill. And there are commandments and regulations based upon what you do when you go visit a sick person. If a sick person is in such a condition that his condition may be embarrassing, you don't visit them. Call. Or send a nice note or card. If a sick person is such that you see that your being there for extended period of time might be discomfort for him because he has to be on or whatever. Well, you stay for a brief time. Right? There are all regulations that are involved with this. What does he say here? Family, friends, who regularly see the sick person should visit him as soon as possible. Upon hearing of illness, others should wait a period of at least 3 days. Yeah, you shouldn't just swamp him. It's a religious duty, a mitzvah, to visit a person in the morning. Shiva. Morning period, the first morning period of a Jew after the funeral is called Shiva. It means 7. You sit for 7 days at home with family. And it's a time for be together. The whole world ends. One of the wonderful things that I thought was about the Clinton family this summer was when Hillary's father died. Hillary's father died. She just dropped everything in the middle of her hearings of her health plan and everything else. She dropped everything. Someone else can handle it. Nobody's indispensable. She went to be with her father when he was dying and afterwards. Right? When Bill Clinton's mother died, the next day he went to Europe. I thought that was just awful. I understand the importance of affairs of state and that trip. And he could, if he would have pushed everything off for 2 days, somehow everybody would have understood. Take time to mourn, to be a human being. Because he had to be there and party and play saxophone and go to the nightclub tonight. I mean, it just wasn't right. It certainly is not a Jewish way of doing things. 7 days, you sit Shiva. We'll get into the details of that. People come to you. Community gets together. They try to organize food for you, so you don't have to worry about preparing it. They come to comfort, to be there. How do you behave in a Shiva house is very important. You see some Shiva houses, people don't know how to behave. They walk in and make it like a party, and they're drinking, and they're telling jokes, and they're figuring to cheer up the mourners. That's not the way to behave.
That is the worst thing you can do to someone.
Yeah, they need to mourn. They don't need to forget. They're there to not to forget. They're there to integrate the experience and mourn so they can go on with their lives. You just don't turn around and face the world like nothing happened. We'll get to that in more detail. But it's a mitzvah for you to be there for them. It's a mitzvah. It is a mitzvah that people have a hard time understanding. Hachnosas kala. It's a great mitzvah to provide funds to enable orphaned girls or very poor girls to marry. And people will come to me from Shulachim from Israel, and they come to America for one purpose. Or they were people in America who were called by people in Israel, and they were going around collecting money for poor girls to get married. And I should contribute and get people to contribute so they can have a nice wedding and a dowry and set up a nice home. And I mean, this is as important as feeding somebody, as giving poor people food to eat. To have that respect and dignity and that good start on life. And that's considered a great, great mitzvah.
They take donated wedding presents too.
That's right, absolutely. That's right. It's a mitzvah to personally provide for the return of a lost object to an owner. That's what Torah says. You find something that doesn't belong to you, you got to return it. So you're walking along the street and you see an item that has some value to it. Doesn't have any value to it. Doesn't really apply, and you have to pick it up, try to find the distinguishing markings on it, and see if you can, take it into. In those days, they used to have Monday and Thursdays were the days of markets. You go into the market and you stand up. I found these glasses that belong to anybody, and everybody will be there. Oh, that's Joe's glasses or whatever. You'd have a way. Come to the synagogue Saturday morning, someone would announce it. You have a way of figuring out maybe this belongs to somebody. If it doesn't, then you keep it.
What about sentimental value?
Well, no. If you're walking in the street and you see something that doesn't have any apparent value to you, maybe a letter or card or something, you don't know who does have sentimental value. But if you think it might have sentimental value, then you try to find the owner, right? Even if you see something you know belongs to and it belongs to someone you don't like, it's a mitzvah to return it. If you see your neighbor, if you see your neighbor is loading his donkey and it's real high with goods and it starts to fall, well, it's your obligation to run over and hold it up for him until you can tie it down. Because once it falls, it's real hard to get it going again. In other words, you don't stand by while your neighbor suffers. A Jew doesn't do that. That's very important.
What would be, if someone was behaving irrationally, and you knew they were behaving irrationally, how do you, what's appropriate? I mean, I don't know, I don't wanna be too specific.
Someone's behaving irrationally,
Someone's behaving irrationally.
and you
Try and get him help.
you try to get him help. That's right. I mean, you do what you can, but there is a point where it's not your responsibility anymore.
Mhm.
I mean, you do make an effort, but if you can't, if your efforts don't succeed,
How many efforts do you make? How many efforts are appropriate?
huh?
1, 2, 3? Is it like forgiveness, like when you ask somebody for forgiveness
If you
and
have
the
to
third
ask 3
time?
times, no, I would say you make an effort. And if the effort doesn't work, then you're free.
Okay.
One effort. If it's a friendship with someone you care about, you may want to make a second and third or fifth try because you care. Jealousy. It's the last one he lists here. By Joshua said, the evil eye, the evil inclination, hatred of mankind, put a man out of this world. What is hatred of mankind? Whenever one says, love the sages, but hate the disciples, love the disciples, but hate the disciples, love the disciples, but hate the common people. I don't know what he's talking about here, but I will tell you that jealousy, evil eye is not jealousy. But, evil eye can be a result of jealousy. Someone's jealous and then they put the evil eye on somebody. And the evil eye, this is real superstition. But I will tell you that not everybody, not every great Jewish scholar, not every rabbi was influenced by Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism. But everyone, including all the rationalists, believed in the evil eye. That there are effects when you send out these vibrations to people. There are effects in the world, and there are 2 ways to protect yourself from the evil eye. What do you think?
When you give it back.
Huh? Now the Sephardim have a custom of wearing a chamsin. Is it chamsin? Chamsika. It's a hand, 5 hand. Now you put your hand in front of your eye to prevent the evil eye from reaching you. You know, you block it. Right? Like the hand of God should protect you, right? But you see, people misunderstood. They think it's really you holding up your hand to protect yourself. It's a silly custom. What it's really symbolic of is the hand of God. So the way to protect yourself from the evil eye is to attach yourself to God. Attach yourself to Torah. Live a Torah way of life, and it protects you.
Is there a specific look that you get, or, I mean,
What? The evil eye?
yeah.
Looks could kill.
Yeah.
No.
The other way is not to be ostentatious. You know, not to show off, not to be the kind of person who shows off to everybody. Look what I have. You know, because that only invites trouble. But let me talk about jealousy. It says in the 10 Commandments, one of the last commandments, not to covet thy neighbor's wife. Right? Isn't that a strange commandment? Not to desire your neighbor's wife. That's a very, very strange commandment because, it's like the commandment in the Shema. We say you should love the Lord your God. How do you command love? You command someone to get up, to sit down, to put on tefillin, to light candles Friday night, to do all the mitzvot. But command an emotion? How do you do that? That's not a simple thing. You really can't do that. So what do you do? This is very important. The commandment of love, I believe, is a commandment to really open your eyes and not close them, but to open them to the mysteries and the wonders of the world. If you'll be receptive to that, then you can't help but come to a love of God. Commandment not to desire your neighbor's wife or husband, as it may be the case. They're both equal in the eyes of God as a sin. the Beis Halevi in his commentary makes a very interesting, I think it's the Beis Halevi, a very interesting analysis. He says if it's like someone sees on the other end of a frozen river, or the other side of a frozen river, is a wonderful delicacy, food, or animal, something they want to eat that's not kosher. And a desire really builds up in him. So he starts to cross the frozen river. And as he does, he's breaking the ice, and one foot falls through. And once he feels that the frozen waters on his leg, his desire for that piece of food is gone. He just runs right back. Yeah. The purpose is God. If someone really fears God and begins to have these desires, we'll see that God specifically commands you not to. And you know what the fear of God entails. That maybe if you're a person who really loves God and experiences God and understands that consequences of this action will be terrible and devastating to you and your relationship with God, it'll just turn that desire off. What is a mamzer, an illegitimate child? A child born to a woman who's married. The father of the child is not her husband. Well, what did the child do to deserve that status of illegitimacy? Then now he can't marry, or she can't marry another Jew. It's not their fault. They're innocent. But the parents should understand before they enter into this kind of behavior, the consequences of these kinds of actions.
Yeah, what would the offspring of
It could have a chilling effect. The offsprings are illegitimate.
offspring of the
Mamzer,
Popular.
the legitimate child, is illegitimate.
even
No.
though they get married?
So it's
No,
like,
she's asking like if the children of the moms are.
if a mamzer marries another Jew and has a child, that child's illegitimate.
Unless she goes through conversion, right?
No.
No.
If he marries a non-Jew, then it's different.
What if what if the
Then
moms
he-
are as a
then
woman?
Then he has to
Then-
convert.
Right. Right.
Okay,
If
gotcha.
the moms are as a woman, no
Yeah.
matter what, if she has child even out of side of a marriage, you're still Jewish, right?
No, I think, yeah, the
Yeah.
child is still Jewish, but I think that there's
They still have the
that's
same
legit.
status?
Yeah, and I think in about the third generation, I haven't really dealt with this situation in a congregational setting, thank God. But I think that to the third generation or so, we're able to eliminate that status in a situation like that. However, because what we do today, we try to eliminate the illegitimate status whenever it arises. We try to find creative halachic ways to validate the first marriage, they weren't really married or whatever. We try to find ways of doing that and being compassionate. Anyway, laws of charity. How much tzedakah should a person give? It's in the middle of 49. By the way, the word tzedakah, charity, doesn't mean charity. Tzedek in Hebrew means right, correct. It's the right thing to do. When you give money to help other people, it's the right thing to do. And last month when I was paying my bills and I didn't have I get solicitations for charities weekly, and I didn't have enough to finish paying my bills last month. Still trying to cover for my daughter's bat mitzvah a few months ago. Nevertheless, I made a check to charity because the feeling is aser bishvil tashatit aser. If you give 1/10 of your salary, a tithe, that's where it comes from. Then it'll come back to you tenfold. So it comes back to you. I believe that. So I don't mind giving, even when I don't have it. But how much is a person supposed to give? 10%. But what do you include in that? I mean, for instance, you can include tuition for your children to day school, to yeshiva. That's part of your 10%. In that case, they're giving a lot more than 10%.
Is that 10% of your take-home salary?
Yeah, after taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 1/10 goes to government right away.
Yeah, but
1/10,
even
try
the
30%
government
something.
society, I mean, taxes sort of came from that. In Europe, the Jewish communities long before they had social
Oh, yeah.
structures came
Yeah.
from people giving, and that's how they developed taxes, so actually, you can't count your taxes and say, well, I've already given 10%.
Well, I mean, part of your taxes does go towards, feeding the hungry
Yeah.
and,
Social program.
medical services and all sorts of things, so does
And
any of
orphans,
that?
like, the Social Security,
Right.
like the Jewish orphan funds.
I don't know if
Stuff
that,
like
I don't know if that counts.
But you're not right, you're not
It
doing
says
it
after
because you
taxes.
want to, you have no choice, the government's gonna take it out anyway.
Yeah, you have to do it.
Yeah,
well.
you can make a
Well.
case, you can
Well,
make a
you do
case.
have a choice.
I mean, if you
Use
can't
the
get
way
the
you want to take the
take home
consequences.
pay.
Put it,
30% in tax.
put it this way, there was a commandment in the Torah that if you're plowing a field, you know, if you have a field, you're plowing a field, you gotta leave the corner of your field for the poor. Okay? Not plowing, what do you call it, harvesting. So you can leave a corner this big, and you can leave a corner this big, right? If you wanna make an accounting and saying that my income tax is part of that 10%, I guess you can I guess you can do it. But just remember, you're dealing with a divine accountant. On page 50, he gives the 8 levels of degree of charity. I think this is from Maimonides. The 8th and lowest level of charity is one give grudgingly. You know, you keep coming to a person, you keep saying no, and you just finally say, "Oh, don't bother me here. Take," throws it at you. What's the highest level of charity? You can look right down and give someone a means to earn their own living, and so they have not only have you helped them, but you've helped restore or maintain their respect and self-respect and dignity, which is very important. If you want to go with the level below, that would be a level where neither the giver nor the recipient know who they are. And very often, I will have someone come to me who is in great need, and I will call somebody and say, you know, I have someone in great need, and I think it'll be a great opportunity for you to give charity. And I won't tell them who it is, and they'll give it to me, and I'll deposit it in my rabbi's discretionary fund, and I'll write a separate check from my discretionary fund to the receiver, and nobody will know who gave and who received. What was the question?
Yeah, this may be off track a little bit, but say you died an unfortunate death, but your organs are still healthy, and you were to and how does Judaism view you giving your organs to someone to help, like a
That's
child?
a charitable type of act, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Put it this way.
but Judaism.
Contrary to what many people believe, Judaism generally forbids any sort of tampering with the body at death, because the body is a receptacle of the soul. It's very holy. So you don't allow autopsies unless there's some criminal involvement and the state demands it, or unless somebody died a mysterious death and there are other people who are sick with that same illness or something, and you need to find out more about it so maybe you can help people who are alive. But that's the same principle. If you can help people who are living, it's a mitzvah to help save someone's life by giving them your organ, right? It's a mitzvah. However, if there's somebody who needs it, you can give it to them. You should give it to them. On the other hand, just to sign off your license, and so when you die, they'll take out your organs and put them in a refrigerator somewhere for some medical students to play with, and maybe someday someone will come along who needs it. That's not allowed.
Can you specify when you become
So what you should do is have a living will, and actually proxy is better than a living will, a living proxy where in the document you say what your intentions are, and you appoint so and so, and if they're going to be there for you, then so and so, it could be a rabbi, it could be a family friend, whoever, to carry out your wishes. Because if you just put a living will in there, you allow lawyers in the state to argue over what your intentions were. But if you appoint somebody, they'll say, well, this is what he or she wanted. I'm proxy. I'm doing it. So they will. If you appoint somebody to do that for you, they will be the one to say, okay, do this and do that, and to let them know what your intention is. If there's somebody who needs your eyes, or someone who needs your heart, and someone, etc., please give it to them.
Can you make that decision also for your child, say to give to another child? If
Yeah,
something
sure.
happens to your child?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, just to store it is not allowed. Okay. So you see the compassion, the kindness. Sense of, as a matter of fact, there was some celebrated cases in Israel when organ operation implants were first begun in Israel. Some very celebrated cases where some religious Jews died and they give a heart to an Arab girl. I don't know if you remember that case in Israel. It was a very big deal, and some people were up in arms about it.
He was an officer in the army, and he got killed, and they put some organ from his body in hers. I think it was the heart.
Yeah. Imagine getting killed by an Arab throwing a rock at you, and then or a sniper.
Well, they shot him.
Shot him. Okay, and then they take your heart out and give it to help an Arab girl. You tell me what other people in the world will do that. Would do such a thing.
You can let her keep it.
Okay. Laws relating to slander, revenge, deceit. Yeah, the Torah states you shall not go about as a talebearer among your people. Even if it's true, you don't go around telling people. Even if it's true. And, so you have a expression called lashon hara. Lashon means language, hara means evil. You don't go around spreading bad talk about people, even if it's true.
So it's not very nice to call my stepmother my step monster.
No. Sometimes, there can be grain of truth in things, and it causes all kinds of repercussions. I'll tell you the famous story that's told about this is the story about the rabbi and the woman in the feather pillow. Do you know the story? This woman was spreading vicious rumors about the rabbi. It's all kinds of terrible things. I mean, wouldn't be the first time that something like that ever happened. Before Yom Kippur, she came to him and she had great remorse. She begged his forgiveness. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I want you to do something. And this will be part of your forgiveness. I want you to go home and take a feather pillow, cut a hole in the bottom, hold it with a hole in the bottom, and walk back to me. She thought it was real crazy, but she really wanted to get this burden that she had in her heart lifted. So she listened to what the rabbi said. She comes back. Of course, the feather pillow was empty. But the feathers were gone. They just dropped out. And she says, why did you want me to do this? And what's so important about this? He said, no, now go and gather the feathers and pick them up and put them back in. She looked at her. You can't do that. That's the way it is with lashon hara. With when you spread rumors and gossip about people, it just spreads, and there's no end to it. You can't really restore it. So be very careful in what you say and how you deal with people. We all love. Did you hear about someone? There's even the sin that when we beat our hearts on Yom Kippur, it's even the sin of the year. Because we wanted to hear it. So, be very careful. And this is one of the greatest sins that there is. People don't realize this. Oh, he tells a story, yeah? See, none of you read the chapter. See, you all would have known it. That's how telling. He tells the story at the bottom of 52. From the bottom of 52 to the top of 53. It's forbidden to carry a grudge. Women have a terrible problem with it. I'm gonna when we get to the next section. I deal with the family life, and I'm gonna do section on the difference between the feminine and masculine, and the power of the feminine. One of the power of the feminine is receptive power, and it holds on to things. And, if you you could upset a woman or say something nasty to her or something like that. 10 years later, she'll remember not only what you said, but what color shirt you were wearing.
How she's gonna get even.
Right.
We call it the computer.
So,
My father.
holding a grudge is destructive. It destroys you as well as everybody around you. So the question is, how do you forgive?
I'm very interested to hear this one.
How does one forgive? Especially when one does terrible things. There was a great article in, I think it was Newsweek a number of years ago. They have this "My Opinion, My Turn" page, where this guy was abused by an alcoholic father much of his life. And now he's become an adult, and he has children of his own. And his father went through Alcoholics Anonymous, and he kicked the habit, so to speak. He's on the wagon. Was that the expression?
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to restore these relationships. So the son writes, "How do I forgive? How do I forgive him? How do I forgive him for all the times he was never there for me? For all the times he never came to any of my games at school or any of my plays? For all the times I needed help and he wasn't there and he beat me instead? How do I forgive? Where do you begin? Is it just enough to say that for the father to say that I want this relationship now? I'm sorry. Does that begin to make amends for the hurt and the pain?
Yeah, it's the
It just
beginning.
takes a long time.
Where do you begin? What's the mechanism? This is a painful question that people ask, because we all have painful moments in our lives, and people have done things to us at one time or another. Well, how do we forgive? I tell you, one of the only ways that I know that makes forgiveness possible is to try to figure out why in the world did this person do this. First of all, understand, if we don't forgive here on earth, God will not be so forgiving up in heaven. If we are not forgiving to others who seek our forgiveness, God will not be forgiving to us who seek His forgiveness.
But how do you know it's the real seeking person on earth?
Right. How do you know that? How do you know when the Father comes to the Son that He really means it? Yeah. Or maybe He wants to borrow $1,000. Well, each case you'll have to make that determination yourself. It's a judgment call. But what this person did in this article, and I thought was very instructive, what he tried to do was to reconstruct the father's life, the father's childhood, to see how he grew up in an abusing home with a abusing father, and who was also an alcoholic, and he was orphaned at an early age, and he went from relatives to relatives who abused him and didn't take care of him, and he really didn't have a clue as to how to behave or how to act as a father or as a human being in a relationship. Didn't have a clue. And so he hid all his feelings and emotion in a bottle, and he lashed out at anybody who would interfere with him.
He just repeated what
That's right.
Well, they say that whoever's abused usually.
So what you try to do is one way to give forgiveness or to find forgiveness in you is to try to enter into the soul of the other person, so to speak, and to find out why. Maybe there were mitigating circumstances that caused them to do this. That doesn't mean you're going to forget the past. That doesn't mean maybe you'll forgive them totally. Maybe they have to earn your forgiveness over a period of time.
On your trust.
But that's how you begin. That's the only way you could begin, I could say. If anybody has any other suggestions, I'm really glad to hear it.
I've been told to do this, and I've tried it before, and it's worked. I was told that the way you forgive somebody, especially if it's something, really, really intense, something that really hurts you intensely, is you're supposed to pray for that person every day for 2 weeks. And if that doesn't work, then you're supposed to pray for them for another 2 weeks. And that when you begin to pray for the welfare, and when you pray for them, what you ask for them is for them to have all the things that you want for yourself, to give them everything that you want. And that's how you're supposed to forgive. It does work most of the time. There's one person I've not ever been able, even when I pray for this person, I've never been able to get past that. But
Well, has this person made an effort to ask for forgiveness?
Sort of, but it's not really.
Sincere.
What he asked for forgiveness for is not what I'm upset about.
Okay. So they have to earn
he
it.
doesn't get it.
Okay.
So,
Have something
Okay.
within yourself.
right.
It'll happen, hopefully. Let's go on. I want you all to read this chapter. I think it's very instructive and important because we're going to be dealing so much with the do's and the don'ts about the technical laws and observances that we tend to forget this side of what's really important. You could be the most kosher person, Sabbath observing person in the world, but if you mistreat other people, then what's the point? Right? Laws pertaining to work and wages on page 55. Person works for you, you got to pay him on time. Very important. Mitzvah from the Torah. Really. You don't send a person away without their wages. Daily labor, pay him daily. If it's a week, whatever, you pay the person on time. Absolutely important. That expectation by the labor is paramount to their dignity and self-respect, and you don't take that away from them. And then it goes for anybody that works for you. It doesn't extend to you hire a contractor to work on your house, and he was supposed to do such and such and didn't do it. Well, you're not getting paid
What-
until you finish it. That's something else.
What about label? When he didn't pay off right away.
What are you referring to?
I'm going back, I'm trying to think where I'm going back to. Label and made him work another 6 years, 7 years.
It was
For Rachel.
Laban,
Yeah.
Laban and Jacob. Yeah,
Yeah.
Laban was evil, deceitful, and he's the epitome of kind of person we should avoid.
All right, but I meant.
Changed Jacob's wages 10 times. 10 times. He worked 6 years for was it 7 years?
7 years.
7 years for 7
for
years for Rachel, and he woke up the
Rachel,
next
and
morning.
then
He was
Leah.
Leah, right? And then he had to agree to work another 7 years in order to get Rachel. He got it right away after.
Anybody had to work the
What was
additional 7.
Okay. Kindness to animals, very important mitzvah. Someone asked me yesterday, are we allowed to wear fur? Right? I'm sure every Jewish husband would love to hear a no on that. Not that it comes up, not that it comes up so much in Atlanta, but in the Northeast.
It's not in vogue
Yeah.
right now.
Well, the prohibition is a kindness to animals, and if you get the fur through mistreating of animals, you're not allowed to do that. That should be off limits to you. Then again, if we do wear leather, and because we use the meat to eat and whatever, and I told the person that there's some rabbinic authorities now forbid the eating of veal, even if it's glot kosher, because the way they raise these calves to produce the veal is cruel in many places, and they put them in cages and they don't let them walk around, and they
So they
stuff
get
them
fat.
so they get real fat, and there's more meat there to sell, and it's just not. So that's a very abiding principle. I mean, we talked before about you're not allowed to milk a cow on Shabbos. However, if you don't milk if you don't milk the cow will be a pain. If that's the case, you have to milk the cow. If no one else, if you can't get someone else who say a non-Jew to do it for you, you do it. Because that, even though it's an animal and you're a human being, you're not allowed to stand around when an animal's in pain.
What is the story about a rabbi? It was raining out one Friday night, and someone offered to give him a ride, and he turned him down because he said, "If you're just starting the engine,
You're not allowed to ride in the car on Shabbos. So, because every second you have eight fires started in yours. If it's an 8-cylinder car, or 6 or 4, depending
Yeah,
on.
but supposing.
So it has nothing to do with kindness to animals. You
No,
got to say
it's
kindness
just-
to your rabbi is the kindness to
Well.
animals. Or you're trying to say that if you're going to be kind to animals, certainly you should be kind to your rabbi. I should read this at a board of directors meeting, I think. Okay. Hunting.
So
Yeah.
the fur issue is, no.
I'm going to tell you, it depends on how the fur comes. If it comes from being cruel to the animals by entrapping them in a cruel way and that sort of thing, you're not allowed to do it. That's the abiding principle.
Well, how do you know?
You know.
Well, you try to find out, and if you
Try to
can't,
find
then then maybe you should stay away from fur.
And
Okay.
it's according
Yeah,
to
I
what
think
you
that's
want to
the best
believe
thing.
in that instance.
Okay.
So you're not supposed to kill him just to get his fur, right?
Right.
I didn't say that.
Said if it's raised.
I say you shouldn't be cruel to animals.
But if you kill him
You're
just to get his
killing him
fur,
for his fur.
Yeah, but it's gonna die anyway.
Yeah, in 10
He's
years
gonna die
though.
an hour later. But like if you raise it, like you said about the veal, if you're mean to it when you raise it and you didn't ever have a life that's worthwhile. And
You could make a
kill it in a
case if you
painful
raise
way,
mink.
then-
If you raise a farm of minks, you could make a case, and if they were properly killed without pain, you could make a case for it. The different authorities would disagree, and some would say it would be all right, and some say it wouldn't be. But the thing is, you have what is the determining value of cruelty to animals? That's what's
Well,
important.
it seems like if you have
Killing
something,
is
if you have an alternative to fur that keeps you warm, I mean, then maybe it's more appropriate to wear that. I have a
Well,
fur coat in my closet, but I don't wear it out anymore. So,
But
Okay.
if you get wool, you get it from an animal, you're shearing the animal.
There are
and
people
then-
there are people I imagine who
But
would
you're shearing it.
who would eat the meat of the minks, or the people who eat rabbit, and you have rabbit fur, and you may not do it, but there are people who do it.
but you can wear leather coats, right?
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
I think
Okay.
maybe you can buy a used mink and then it didn't die in pain already.
Okay.
We'll carry
Hunting.
away with this.
Hunting.
we're all being silly.
You're not allowed to go and hunt. A Jew is not allowed to hunt. Period.
Forward.
It's cruel to the animal. Don't say it's for food, because you have in order to eat it, you have to capture it. You can't eat an animal that's been shot. You have to capture it, and you have to properly slaughter it so it doesn't feel that pain. So a Jew is not allowed to hunt. My father tells a story about, I'll never forget, when he went hunting for the first time. He was his last years of the service. He flew like 90 missions overseas. He was only supposed to fly like 25 or 35, and they kept him there. And he comes back, and he starts teaching cadets. And so his buddies, in the Army Air Force at the time, let's go hunting. He's stationed somewhere in the south here. It's a big deal hunting. So he went with them. He couldn't say no. He tried to say no. He said no enough times, but he couldn't say no anymore. So he, picked up his gun and he had this deer in his sights. He just threw the gun down. He couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. And that's the way a Jew is. You don't kill for sport. You don't kill for sport. And you can make a case maybe in certain places where there are too many animals, and that if you allow them all to live, then they'll all die.
Oh,
I mean, but generally for sport you don't do it.
But venison, you're allowed to have venison, right?
Venison, deer is a kosher animal. You have to capture it properly, slaughter it.
So you'd have to corral it and then.
Yeah,
It couldn't be shot.
for a pretty high
Right.
corral.
yeah.
Acts of justice. The Talmud, interestingly, if you take a look at the Talmud, the Code of Jewish Law, the bulk of it, one of the big bulks of it, deals with laws of justice in what we would call civil law. It doesn't. How do you deal with disputes ordinary people have? And if the world lived by the civil law and the Talmud, this would be a much nicer place. It's fair as can be. And it goes to every single length to be as fair as possible. I'll give you a classic example. I'm sure I gave it before. See if you remember. Two men come to court and say, holding a talus. Each one says, it's mine. I found it. What do you do? What do you do? If you were a judge, I want to tell you what a court means in Judaism. Court means three people. One of whom has to be an expert in that field of law for which the decision is being decided. So
They both found it?
they come. Each of them. They both come holding the talus, and each one says, "It's mine. I found it."
We
Right.
should try to find it because it wasn't in the first place.
All right, they can't. Obviously, it was found, and it doesn't have any markings on it, so you can't turn it to original owner.
Can you
This case,
figure out who found it first?
they're lying. One of them's lying, obviously, right? I found it, and he came along and grabbed it, and the other one says the same thing. The court says, you sell the talus and you give each half,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Here's the follow-up case. This is
One of them will
Just
say,
sounds
"Go
like
ahead
a
and
religious
take it."
article, though.
no. The follow-up case is they both come holding a talus. One says we both found it. The other one says I found it. It's all mine. What do you do?
You give it to the one
He
that
said,
said,
"We both found it."
we both
We
found
both
it.
found it.
That's right. Well, he knows it. He
What did he say?
studied it. See?
The one that says I found it gets 3/4?
That's 3/4. Why? Why? What's the logic?
Possession.
The logic is because, first of all, they agreed that they both found, one agreed that they both found it, but the other one says, I found it. So naturally, since, the first one that said I found, we both found it, he's like forfeiting some of his rights. So,
And possession is 3/4 of the law.
No. In other words, they one half they don't argue about.
Yeah.
The one says it's all mine. One half he says all mine. The other one says half of it is yours and half of it is mine. So one half they don't argue about.
It's the other
It's
half.
the other half they
Oh.
argue about. So that you divide in half. You see the logic.
Gotcha.
Trying to be as fair as possible under the law, but the details are just incredible. Again, what I try to do with this chapter with you today is to give you an understanding that all the technicalities of the ritual that we're going to go through the rest of the book has to be based upon this principle of chesed, of kindness, of love for your fellow man, because that's where the real growth in life comes from.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Where does patience fall in all of this?
Patience?
Uh-huh.
What do you mean?
Like, you know, how if someone is to have patience or not to have patience in the means.
Talk about a doctor?
Yeah, and any,
A doctor has patience, or
right, or,
if you have enough
in the-
patience, you're doing all right? No, no.
no. No doctor's patience. You know, how some, you know, how like sometimes I could become very impatient with someone, and where does that fall in? I mean, should I become more of a patient person, or get irritated about certain things?
Well, obviously, the intent of the law is to give you a certain evenness. If you're constantly looking into the motivations of the other person and looking upon other people favorably and with kindness, impatience is the kind of thing that doesn't wait to hear the whole story and just impulsively acts. What one should do is one should try to exercise patience and hear and observe as much as you can before you act. And you find that you will then not say as many things that you'll be sorry for. Right. Okay. Next week we're doing the class on the letters, and at breakfast, and the week after I don't know if I'm gonna go to the Sabbath, or I may skip the Sabbath, go to family life, and then come back to the Sabbath.
Go to family life now.
It's chapter 7.
Chapter 7.
I'm not sure if I'll do 5 or 7 next time we meet.
So read both of them.
So
just
read
in
both of
case.
them. And read it, and I want you to read 4. Obviously, very few of you have read it.
I read it, but I just need to go back.
So read it and take notes, and bring me your questions.